Hello, everyone. We're back on the circuit again doing the history of soccer here in Toronto, of the Caribbean community. And we have a gentleman here. You know, we did entertainment, we did different things, but we're back to the football slash soccer. I use the word football because this gentleman is in the realm of the football part of the sport. So, without further ado, I'll ask him to introduce himself and give us a little of his background.
Hi, afternoon, Alvin. Afternoon to all the viewers who will be tuning in this afternoon. My name is Warren Barrett. I'm the former captain and goalkeeper of the Jamaica national football team known as the Reggae Boyz, and the first English-speaking Caribbean country to participate in a World Cup that we did in France in 1998.
Okay, so how you got into the sport? You know, you gave us the pinnacle, which is reaching to a World Cup. But did you ever dream of when you got into the sport? Did you ever think you'd reach to that level? Like, how did that go? How did that whole journey go?
A little bit of my background. I was born in Jamaica, of course, in the little rural district by the name of Chatham, that is in the parish of St. James. My first schooling was the St. Miss Catherine Basic School. That's where my formative years of schooling began. And then I went to Goodwill All Age. I did 1 year there. And then I migrated into Montego Bay because my parents, my mom and my dad, they both left the country for the city for a better life, not only for myself, but also for my other siblings, of which I am the last one. I was enrolled at the Chetwood Memorial Primary School, and that's where my early footballing career per se started. I fell in love with the sport. I remember going to Jarrett Park, which was the major football venue in Montego Bay from I was say age 6, 7. So as I've often told a lot of people, or tell a lot of people when I talk to them, is that I've seen the best of the best from that Montego Bay and the parish of St. James has produced over those years. So that's my early development. I fell in love. I played for my school team, the Chetwood Memorial football team, from grade 4 into grade 5, because then I took the common entrance exam, as it was named then, and I was successful, and I was placed at the most prestigious boys school in Montego Bay, Cornwall College. And that's where I further started to hone my skills. I tried out for the under 14 team in second form,
But
but
if I may, seeing that
yeah,
you're trying out on all these things, for those who don't know, this is a top class, or I don't know if he's still saving in the old boys thing, goalkeeper. So trying out, how did you initially start as a goalkeeper, or how did that work for you?
I, I ventured between both. As a young man, I've always told people, it was a God-given ability. I remember even as a little boy, probably age 6, 7. There's another, for those who are familiar with Montego Bay, there's another football ground they call the UDC. And I remember in the probably the late 70s, not my brother and I and friends, we would go to the ground and we would kick around the ball. But even then, I remember I would go in goal. And there was a certain legend of Jamaica's football, Partiga Davis, who was the person who was kicking the balls to me in the goal. So ever since I was small, I had the ability to keep goal. But as you know, as a young man, I guess you wanted to explore what it is like to play on field as well. So I ventured between both. I played in goal sometimes, and then sometime I'd play as a striker for the school team. And that continued until third form in high school. I remember when we were in second form and we were having our annual class competition. I was in, my class was 8-5 and we were playing against 8-1. No, 8-1 had a number of the boys who played on the under 14 team that year. So they were a star-studded team, if you want to call it that. And I had a big game against them. We lost 1-0 at the end of the day, but I really kept well. And fortunately for me, the under 14 coach for the following year, who was also our Spanish teacher, Mr. Clyde Morris, he was in attendance at that game. And he was surprised. And after the game, he called me and he said, "Hi, Warren, I didn't know you were such a good goalkeeper." He says, "You need to come for the under 14 team and try out for the goalkeeping position." I said, "Okay, sir, I will." And then in third form, under 14 training, I made the team. And I think that is when I really started to take goalkeeping a lot more seriously. I stopped basically from third form playing out on field. I just basically took the goalkeeping, as I said, goalkeeping position more seriously. And then from then I started.
So the goalkeeping, so it had nothing to do you as a striker. Were you scoring goals, or you was just one of them guys they put on the wing so and not passing to? I don't know, you know.
No, I'm a goal scorer. I'm a sharpshooter. Even sometimes when I play even Masters League or I play scrimmage, I score a lot of goals because I'm very composed in the box, and I always tell players that I wasn't born in a goal. You know, I have good technical ability on the ball. I do stuff to strikers that they do to defenders. So I'll not make them. I'll throw it over their heads. I do things like that, especially when sometimes in games that we're winning comfortably. I also want to have fun and enjoy myself, so I also do a lot of that stuff.
Okay, staying with around that same that perimeter, were you always tall as a youth? Were you always big? Because we stay with the position, the striker and the goalkeeping. Were you tall as a youth? How tall are you right now? And when did you start?
Well, currently I'm 6 feet 2 inches. I was not this tall as a youth. I was a chubby young man. My mom was 5'2", and a lot of people said I was going to be short like my mom. And I think when I played under 14, I may have been 5'6", 5'7". Yeah, but then one December in 1986, it was, I was called to our national under 17 team. Now, the first ever Jamaica national under 17 team is the one that I played on that year in the CONCACAF qualifyings. And venturing to Kingston, there was a teammate, a schoolmate of mine, Ty and Campbell. Both of us made that team. So we would travel most weekends to Kingston for training and back. And I realized after a few months that I started to really grow. You know, my brother, God rest his soul, he passed away in 2016. I reached him at his shoulder when I left. And each month when I came back, I would be getting closer and closer to him until eventually I grew past him. I was the tallest member of my family within another year or so.
Okay. So now, just for the youths to understand that even if they're not as tall, we see it in basketball. Everybody know my story as midget. Now we moving up. You just mentioned the under 17 national team. How did your national career go? As I see that picture, that national picture within '98. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm just bringing it up here because, again, Warren was part of the soccer salute here in Toronto which was the precedent where Toronto FC had executives there, now looking to break the ice here in Toronto. So having these type of quality players, and we given you his background, you realize that we take a lot of things for granted, but we do have people in the community and abroad that contributed to the soccer slash football here in Toronto. So as far as the national go, you make that 98. How was it going into the 98, and what was 98 like?
98, as you know, was an historic year for us. Well, it started in 1996 with the qualification process for the World Cup. It was long and arduous. It's something that we believed in. We had a super coach that God blessed us with, Coach Rene Simoes, who instilled a lot of belief, a lot of professionalism, and mental fortitude and toughness that eventually helped us to qualify. Because, as you know, the qualification process is no easy feat. It's very difficult when you look at it. The fact that we started against Suriname in the elimination stages and culminated with our last game against Mexico at the National Stadium. I think that was at least 20 games, or a few more than that the qualification process entailed. But I mean, every time I think about that final game against Mexico, I mean, you get goosebumps. The National Stadium was jam-packed. There were people climbing the walls who didn't want to miss out on the occasion. There were 35,000 or more inside the stadium. And I remember when the final whistle blew, the first thing I did, there was a local cameraman, I don't remember his name, but he was always at all our games. He was behind the goal. And I remember as the final whistle blew, I just turned, I walked over to him, I hugged him, and then the tears of joy just started to flow. And they weren't only tears of joy, but also I think of relief, of a sense of accomplishing your goals and dreams. Also, the fact that you basically silence your critics and your doubters, if even for that moment, because there are a lot of, I can tell you, there are a lot of doubters and critics. I remember we lost in Costa Rica, and the majority of the nation wanted me to be dropped from the team. Some people even boycotted the next game against El Salvador by saying that they wouldn't turn up if I was playing. So there were so many things that not only myself but the team had to overcome. And what brought me a lot of joy as well was the fact that even after that trying game against Costa Rica and we returned home, my teammates didn't abandon me. I remember I had who I term my member of parliaments, or my senior players, included people like Peter Cargill, Theodore Whitmore, Durant Brown, Ian Goodison. I mean, they had my back. If we were driving on the bus or walking and anybody said anything negative, they would hear something from one of them. So they really had my back during that period, and I knew I had to, that faith that they showed and the love that they showed for me, I knew I had to repay them any way I could. And I'm just thankful that God brought all of us together for such an occasion as that. I mean, it will live long in the memory of Jamaicans and Jamaica's folklore and football and history.
Yeah, and at this point, I'd just like to make the public aware that Warren normally sends me a word of the day every day, and he's very well grounded spiritually. And, he sends me these inspirational words every day, sometimes twice a day. So, Canada now has qualified after 36 years. And just briefly, we touch on that. What's the difference if you had to send some sort of advice to some of these young guys that go in there? If you could recap your experience, I know you're in the net, all right, but overall, how different it is and what they should expect.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, as you know. there's no easy games in football, especially these days. As we've come to realize, even teams that outpossess their opponents, they sometimes end up losing. So possession, I think, is very overrated these days. But going to a World Cup is special. And for Canada since 1986, I remember the qualifying game that they defeated us on when they qualified. Officially, I spoke to Atiba Hutchinson after the game, and I basically told him that couldn't have happened to a much better and loyal professional than him. I mean, I remember Atiba he has been playing for Canada for years. And I'd say probably this is his swan song, and for him to be part of this team that qualified, I mean, I was so happy for him. And it's just for them to go out and just to have fun, enjoy the experience. I know Canada have a golden generation of players right now. I think the major difference is with our team in 1998, we had the majority of our team were local-based Jamaicans who played our football for clubs locally. But the difference with this Canadian national team is that they have players playing all over the globe. So they have a fantastic group. When you look at Davids, you look at Davies, who is in Bayern Munich. You know, I mean, they are doing really, really well for themselves. So I think they can spring some surprises if they really work on their whatever plans that the coach might be putting in place for each game and to execute. As I have said, possession is something that you don't have to have a lot of the ball to win games. It's just for you to be organized defensively, to keep your shape, keep switched on. And as you know, with a little bit of fortune, you can put away at least one chance and defend for the rest of the game. You know, and I think there'll be a lot of surprises in this World Cup. It won't be as straightforward as some people might think, and because of that, I think Canada really do have a good chance. I think of even progressing from the round. And I know a lot of people might be saying otherwise. The fact that they're a small country in terms of being a soccer power, but I mean, when you have quality players, then anything is possible, and it's what you do on the day that counts. It's not what people say are in the past. It's what you do on the day during that 90 minutes plus that counts.
Okay, so now we know what type of person, the experience we have in Warren here. And now we had the honor of having him come to Toronto for this absolute, which is the main order of the day. Now, coming to Toronto, you realize now that even CONCACAF is hosting some of the Jamaica, the Reggae Boyz game in Toronto here. Are you aware of the population, and Toronto is regarded as the #1 city for the diaspora of Jamaica?
Well, no, I haven't done my research on that, but I know a little about the Carabana festival that they normally put on there. I remember we participated in, I think, 1995 Trinidad and Carabana tournament. We played Trinidad and we played Canada in 2 games.
How was that? And were you looking forward to it? And yeah, let's talk the Carabana Cup. How was that?
Well, as I said, I didn't know the history of the occasion, but I just knew it was a festival. I mean, people turned out in their numbers, in their colors to celebrate. There were 2 intense games. I'm not 100% sure of the results, but we did enjoy both games. I think then as players, though, looking back, I don't think we got to really appreciate a lot of the cities that we visited and probably some of the occasion, because as a player, your first is to concentrate on playing. So the history behind, say, like a Carabana tournament or the concept of Carabana, it's really lost to us as players because we are just zoned in and focusing on playing. Even though we got to see a little bit of the city because, as you know, I have a lot of friends in Canada, and So I remember they took us into downtown. We did a little shopping. We did a little walking around, seeing some of the picturesque sites, etc. But when the moment we got back to the hotel, it was, back in football mode, getting ready for the encounter against both encounters actually against Canada and Trinidad. But I remember we really enjoyed it. We really enjoyed the occasion, and it's always good when you can travel and you can see friends, and especially the Caribbean people, but more so Jamaicans, more specifically, who came out to support us both games, and I'm sure they left in a happy mood.
Okay, for if you're noticing a difference in the scenery here, we have relocated because the lighting was faded. How did you get contact and know about it?
Well, I guess that's the astuteness of our chief in staff at the time, Captain Warren Barrett. As you know him, he has contacts all across the globe. So I'm sure he was integral in getting the national team to participate, and the fact that the Reggae Boyz brand was getting renowned across the world, and we wanted our Caribbean neighbors as well as Jamaicans who resided in Toronto to get a taste of the brand, especially before the crucial World Cup qualification campaign began. And we rolled into Toronto. We were pretty confident. I remember, I think we were invited out one occasion by the Jamaican diaspora. I remember Alimo came to pick us up. Myself, Theodore, I think Ian Goodison, Ricardo Gardner, Doreen Brown were in that car. We opened the top and we were driving around with, half of everybody outside.
You light up like a little kid right now,
Yeah, so we lived some of the life of the entertainers and the big rollers, for that period. And it was good to really let our guards down, at least for a while, because as you know, as footballers, when you travel, you're so zoned into the competitions that you sometimes don't get to enjoy the scenery or the occasion. You just have to be zoned in because you want to go out, you want to perform well for the nation, you want to perform well for your teammates, your family, and also for the expected fans who will be coming out, who always expect us to win regardless of who the opposition is. And I recalled I thought we tied with Canada, and we beat Trinidad 1-0. And as you know, that is always a derby with Trinidad, and anytime we beat Trinidad, then the entire Jamaican community, whether home or abroad, is satisfied. And so it was great to finish that tour with a victory, and it also was a morale boosting victory for us as well.
Did it help in your program going in because you were successful in qualifying for 1998? So in your mind now, in hindsight, did that help towards that? And then I'll ask you about the Toronto and how you thought of Toronto then, and if that was your first experience in Toronto.
Well, yes, that was beating Trinidad was crucial leading to the build-up. Why I said that, I remember in January of 1995, we call it the historical tour. That was the first time any Jamaica national team was going to Brazil. We were there for a month in camp, and we were preparing rigorously, arduously, and we played, I think, more than 15 games there while we were there. We traveled 10 hours, 12 hours to play games. We come back to our home base. The following day, we'd travel again 6-7 hours to play. So it really was a difficult month. But looking back now, I can see why coach really wanted us to go through such a process, because the qualification process is not easy. As you know, you have to take flights. Sometimes there are delays. You go to countries, they might hold you up for no reason in the custom or immigration zone. I remember that happened in Costa Rica. But thankfully, we spoke about it before we left. He said, listen, guys, international football is a war. countries will play mind games. They will do things to try and get to disturb you, to disturb your mental focus. And I don't know the reason why, but we were held up in San Jose in the airport, and we made light work of it. I mean, some players started to entertain themselves, singing, DJing, played cards, running practical jokes, etc. So we didn't let that perturb us. So I think looking back, that's why we went through such a hard deal in Brazil, and it really helped us, as I said, when we started the Road to France campaign. Our first game was in Suriname, in the jungle. Theodore Tapo Whitmore scored the only goal in that game. We won 1-0, and that was the start of great things that were to come.
Okay, so getting that Carabana Cup experience, could you recall now how that whole thing evolved? Now you played all these qualifying games and stuff. You qualified through Mexico last game in the stadium. How was that, and is that different when you reach the big stage? We call that the big stage. What, if you could recall, the big stage was like for you? Is it just ball as usual, or is it faster? How you recall? I mean, I know you're a goalkeeper, but if it's faster for you. It's a faster thinking process for you. So break that down for us.
Yeah, international football is a different level, completely different level from even club football. We often tell a lot of players and even fans, the critics, as you know, I have the saying where I said it's easy for people to sit in their living rooms watching their big screen and saying it's easy to make a pass or to make a run or to score a goal. When you're pitch side or when you're on the field, it's a totally different thing. I tell them our Caribbean players, we tend to jog in space. These international players, they sprint in space. I remember 2016, we played Chile in the Battle of the Champions, the Caribbean champions against the South America champions. I don't know, we won that game 2-1, but man, it was the first time I saw Alexis Sanchez live. And our physical trainer at the time, Andre Waugh, was sitting beside me, and he touched me and he nudged me and he said, "Skip, are you watching Alexis Sanchez?" And I said, "Andre, who do you think I'm looking at?" I said every cent that he was earning at that time for Manchester United was worth it. I mean, he did some things that game. I didn't know players ran that hard for 90 minutes. And that's the difference at the very top level. Those players are going to run you down for 90 minutes, whether defensively or offensively. And it's just the truth. And that is where our Caribbean players need to get to. That's the level they need to get to be successful. And the only way they can get there is if they do well, whether for their clubs or their national teams, and they can get contracts to go to the big European countries where week in, week out, they'll be playing against top opposition. Physically, psychologically, mentally, they will be better prepared, and they will know what it is to be playing on the big stage against the big boys. And I mean, trust me, it's a different level.
Oh, you remember the 3 games? You lead the team. I look at the picture that I sent you, and those are quality players. You can recall the players. You can recall the composure of the team. I know you won the last game. Could you recall that recap the whole World Cup 98?
Yeah. The World Cup was special. Even though we qualified, and qualification process, I said, was long, was arduous. But as you know, as you said, we're coming up against some of the top nations in the world. Croatia was the first game. They had a lot of tough players. I remember Boban, who I think was at AC Milan. They had Davor Suker. They had Davor Suker, who ended up, I think, being the top goal scorer of that World Cup. They really were a great team. They finished third, I think, in 1998. So that just shows how difficult our group was. And what's important is that at this level, these countries will create a half chance and they're going to take it. So that's one of the major difference when you play against the top teams. Out of nowhere, they can just hit you on a break, or someone might strike a beauty from distance, or their build-up play might just leave you awestruck, and then you're taking the ball out of the back of the net. So I think from that aspect, I think that was a major difference. We didn't have that international experience for as you know, majority of our players played locally in Jamaica. So for us to be even on the same pitch with Croatia, with Argentina, I mean, it goes to show the hard work and dedication and sacrifice that we all put in to ensure that we qualified and even gave ourselves a competitive chance of competing on that stage. And at the end of the day, we did ourselves proud. We did the country proud. We did the Caribbean proud. I mean, we won one of 3 games. And even if we had lost all 3 games, I mean, it can't take away that feeling of playing in the greatest showpiece on earth. Ryan Giggs, legend of Manchester United, didn't get to grace that scenario of playing in a World Cup. And I'm sure if you go and ask him now, he probably would give up some of his EPL titles with Manchester United just to have grace the international stage, a World Cup stage, which is country Wales. So I wouldn't exchange that for anything else. And again, I'm just happy that God used me as one of those persons to bring hope to not only our nation but the Caribbean, also for youngsters to dream and know that even when they dream, their dreams can come to a reality, that they can see themselves participating on the grandest stage around the world in whichever sport, not only football, whatever sport it is. And even say for track and field, you can see what the Caribbean is doing on the world stage. So it's the same for football. We just need the opportunity to go out, and I'm sure that we, as a Caribbean people, we will do our respective nations proud.
You were leading the 98 team, correct? That was a class team.
Yeah. We had a number of quality players, as you know, Theodore himself, Walter Boyd, Onandi Lowe, big, powerful, strong striker who was strong in the air, lethal with his left foot. Ian Pepe Goodison, who, I mean, was a tower of strength at the back. He give him any striker, and he was ready to do a marking job on them. And he regularly told me in training that he doesn't like to mark Walter Boyd and Onandi Lowe because they don't move enough off the ball. He loves strikers who keeps him active, who makes a lot of runs. These are the players he wants to mark. I remember he took delight in marking Dwight York in a qualification game, I think, for the 2006 World Cup in the National Stadium. I was at that game, and man, he had me in stitches because that is Pepe. Give him the best strikers around the world, and you'll get a grand game for him.
Yeah. So, okay. So now we move up now. And
one sec. It's rain is coming, so I'm going to have to move.
Oh boy. Now we meet to the meat of the whole interview, which is the soccer salute. This was done with invitational Jamaica team and an invitational Trinidad and Tobago team. So how did you get involved in the soccer salute, and what did it mean to you?
A friend, Marcus, he was integral in getting myself involved. He reached out to me saying that he wanted to put on a game against Jamaica Invitational against a Trinidad and Tobago Invitational. And as you know, that is any Trinidad Jamaica game is going to be an epic affair. You know, the history and the rivalry between both countries. So I told him I was interested. I spoke to Theodore. He was interested as well. And then I had to be the liaison person to try and get a few other players based in Jamaica who were former national players who were still competing at a high level. And I remember I spoke to Daniel Ricketts, who is the brother of legendary MLS goalkeeper Donovan Ricketts. Garth Peterkin, very, very close friend of mine who resides in Fort Lauderdale. He was also part of the qualifying campaign for the World Cup in France in 1998, and a few other players. And them in through the travel agent, we got back all passports, all players got the visiting visas, and we were able to obtain the tickets. And off we went to Toronto in the cool. I think it was in August as well, so it was cool. The conditions were nice. The conditions were good for playing football because it wasn't too hot, it wasn't too cold. It was just the right temperature. And I remember looking back at even the photos that you sent me, and I didn't realize that there were so many spectators out. They came out in their numbers. I didn't take notice of that because I was just concentrating on playing the game and putting on a good performance for the people, not only the Jamaicans, but also other Caribbean nationals that were out. I'm sure the people from even the Toronto FC organization, probably they were out as well to see what type of atmosphere would be garnered in that ground, the type of crowd support that they might be getting when they form the club. And I was just so happy to be there. The result of the game was secondary when it came on to that, because it was bigger than that. It was bigger than just the result of the game. I think it was the beginning of something great to come. And I was so happy and pleased for Toronto when they won the MLS Cup a few years ago, to know that probably at the embryonic stage of their organization, we were in Toronto taking part in a game of such nature. So it really, really, really was good to be there, and we thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah. So now, what are you doing? You got the soccer salute. That's under your belt. So that's twice playing in Toronto. Did you play any other time in Toronto? I know you came as part of the coaching staff. What is your relationship with Toronto? What do you think of Toronto, a la Canada in general? What do you think about there?
Let me go back a number of years. My first visit to Canada was actually in 1992. I was part of the national team that was playing in the qualification for the 1994 World Cup. We played at the Varsity Stadium. I remember we had to play in stockings and gloves. We drank tea at halftime. That was my first experience of playing in a winter conditions. It really, really was cold. I remember even in our hotel rooms when we got the cans of sodas, we just popped the windows open, put them out on the ledge for 15, 20 minutes, and then we had freezing cold sodas. So
No, Warren, don't do that to us. Don't do that to us. You're getting people scared now.
Yeah, so that was my first memory of being in the cold. But as a young man, it was the experience was good. It's not something that you feared. It was more exciting personally for me coming in the cold. You always hear about playing football in cold weather, but until you experience it, you don't really know what it feels like. But it really was good. We lost that game 1-0. I had a great game that day, though we lost. But that was my first visit and my first experience. I also remember the Jamaican diaspora, or some of the locals in Canada, they invited us for a dinner that night. I think the night after the game, I was called out to do the vote of thanks. I think that was when I think that's when I was being groomed to be the future captain of the team. So I think that was one of my responsibilities as well. That's when it started for me. I was 21, going 22 years old of age. So I was pretty young. I started captaining my national team when I was 24. So I still was pretty young, pretty inexperienced at this level, but it was an opportunity I wasn't going to turn down. And over the years, I've visited Canada, I think at least 6 or 7 times. I have a number of friends there. As you know, I'm from Montego in Jamaica, so there are a lot of Montegonians who reside in Toronto. I have schoolmates who reside in Toronto. My sister lives in Kingston, Ontario. When I visit her, she comes to visit me in Toronto. So it's always a joyous moment for me, and not only for me, but also the rest of the team, to really come into
a beautiful city as Toronto, and basically to try and perform as best as we can when we were players. Now, as a member of the technical staff, uh, even though we lost at the last visit, it was good to be back. I met up with a schoolmate of mine who I had not seen for over 20 years, so it's always good when I get to visit Toronto.
Seeing that you had the experience of France, the FIFA World Cup in France.
I think it's a major difference with the Canadian national team. They have a number of quality players, and they fly their trade outside of the country, outside of MLS. And I think they really have a very, very solid team that can do well. So it's just for them to believe in their abilities, in their qualities, trust the coach and the staff and the plans that they will want to put in place. And hopefully they can execute on game day, because the important thing is not what people say, it's not who you're facing. The most important thing is what you do during the 90 plus minutes that counts. If you remember the last World Cup, South Korea defeated West Germany in one of the games, and to many people it might have been a surprise. But as you know, football games are played on the pitch, and it's what you do that counts on that day. So it's just for the Canadians to go out without fear, just enjoy the moment and play as well as they can, and hopefully let's see what will happen at the end of the 90 minutes.
But you are one keep mentioning that you think possession is overrated. And how you come by that, and what do you think about that? Really? Are you a strong believer of that? Because you know sometimes they say if you don't have the ball, you can't score, you can't win. So
it worked for our national team. So I'm not just talking because of talk's sake. The 2017 when we got to the CONCACAF World Cup finals, our one of our team mottos was to enjoy being out of possession. Let's enjoy playing without the ball. That is something we try to instill in the team, because as you know, a lot of players on the whole love to be in possession. But when you're out of possession, people get frustrated, people quarrel, people fight, people stop running. But we told the players, listen, just believe in the system that
you're frozen.
Work hard.
Hold on.
Let's enjoy being out of possession.
Warren, hold on.
Paid off. I remember the game against Mexico.
You're frozen. You tell the players believe in, as you say, believe in the system, you went frozen. You told the players?
Yeah, we told them to believe in the system and to enjoy playing without the ball. And we saw that, especially in the game against the Mexicans in the semifinals. We showed them the flanks. We said, listen guys, show them the flanks, let them get crosses in all day. We are going to defend these crosses. They're not going to score. They're not going to change their game plan. And we just, if you check the stats, they had majority of possession that game. They probably had more shots on goal and on target than we did. But at the end of the day, we scored the all-important goal. So it's something I've been looking at for a number of years. When you check the possession, even with a Manchester City at times, some games that they end up losing, they probably sometimes have 80% of possession, 30 odd shots on goal, and they end up losing 1-0. The other team might have 2 shots, 1 on target, and that 1 on target got the goal. So it's something that has been showing up over and over, and I think the stats show as well that France, the winners of the last World Cup, they had, I think, 43% of possession overall during the World Cup. So it shows it's what you do when you get possession that counts. How lethal are you in front of goal when you create those opportunities? That is what a lot of teams are doing. They're hitting people on the break, and hopefully when they create opportunities, you make them count, then you make people suffer, because then they'll have to come and break you down the sport.
What are you doing now?
I'm still a member of the Jamaica Football Federation. I'm one of the goalkeeper coaches. And I'll also be working with Coach Theodore at Mount Pleasant FC. That's one of the teams in the Jamaica National Premier League, which is set to kick off later this month. The team is based out of the parish of St. Ann. They are football hungry fans. They are yearning for success. And if it's the Lord's will, I just hope that we can bring some joy to them this coming season.
Okay, so all right. So Warren, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk with you, for you sharing your thoughts, for you giving your information, making parallel comparison with the Canadian team and the Reggae Boyz team, which should help for those who are interested. You stay safe and stay tuned.
I thank you, Alvin, anytime. All right, God bless. Take care.
Okay.